Example 1, finding R using formula 10.1. We're going to use formula 10.1 to find the linear correlation coefficient R for the Powerball jackpot amounts and number of tickets listed in the table here below. Now let's scroll down here just a little bit to look at that formula. Here is 10.1, where R is equal to n times the sum of x times y minus the sum of x times the sum of y divided by the square root of n times the sum of x squared minus the sum of x and then squared times the square root of n times the sum of y squared minus the sum of y and then squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a table and then find all of these particular values using this table here. So again, using this table here, we're going to do the following. Now the variable x is used for the jackpot amount. The variable y is used for the numbers of lottery tickets, and there are 9 pairs of data, so there's 9 total pairs of data here where n is equal to 9, and the other required values are computed in the table. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the first column. The column again represents x, and these are the values of each x. So if we put those values in and then we add them all together, we get the sum of the x, which is equal to 1934. Okay, if we take our y values and then if we add all of those, so we put all our y values in here and then add them all together, we get the sum of y, which is equal to 239. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a column called x squared. We're going to take each value of x and then we're going to square it. So just let's take a look at the first one. So if we take a look at the first one, if we take 334 and we square it, we get 111,556. If we take 127, square that, 16,129. If we take 300 and square that, we get 90,000. If we take 227 and square that, we get 51,529. If we take 202 and square that, we get 40,804. If we take 180 and square that, we get 32,400. If we take 164 and square that, we get 26,896. If we take 145 and square that, we get 21,025. And if we take 255 and square that, we get 65,025. Now what we want to do is we want to add up this column. We want to find the sum of x squared. So therefore, the sum of x squared when we add up all these values gives us 455,364. Now similarly, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing with the y values. We're going to take the y of 54 and square it, we get 2,916. If we take 16 and square that, we get 256. If we take 41 and square that, we get 1681. If we take 27 and square that, we get 729. If we take 23 and square that, we get 529. If we take 18 and square that, we get 324. We get the same value here. 18 squared is equal to 324. 16 squared is 256. And then 26 squared is 676. And again, we want to find the total of this column, which is y squared. So the sum of y squared is going to equal 7,691. Okay, now the last column that we're going to create is we're going to take the value of x and then multiply it by y. So we're going to take 334 and multiply it by 54. So 334 times 54 gives us 18,036. If we take 127, multiply it by 16, gives us 2,032. 300 times 41 gives us 12,300. 227 times 27 gives us 6,129. 202 times 23 gives us 4,646. 180 times 18 gives us 3,240. 164 times 18 gives us 2,952. 145 times 16 is 2,320. And then 255 times 26 gives us 6,630. Now we want to find the sum of this total column. So when we find the sum of x times y, then we get 58,285. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to plug in all those values into our formula. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we know is the value of n. Well, we know that n represents 9. So everywhere that we find n, we're going to put the value of 9. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that in our formula here. So we know that n is 9, there's 9, and then there's 9. Okay, and then we want to find the value of the sum of xy. So the sum of xy is 58,285. So that is in this first one here, so 58,285. Okay, and then what we're going to do is now plug in the value of the sum of x. Well, the sum of x is 1934. So it's minus the sum of x, which is 1934 here. And then down here below, we have the sum of x squared minus the sum of x and then square it. So we also have that value here, 1934, and we're going to square that. Okay, now we need to take a look at the value of the sum of y, which is 239. So we're going to multiply that up here in our numerator, which is 239. And then also down here at the denominator, we're going to take that 239 and then square it. Okay, and then we also have the following value. We have the sum of x squared. And so the sum of x squared is 455,364. So that's going to be in that piece of the formula. And then we also have the following. We have the sum of y squared. And so the sum of y squared is 7,691, and so we're going to put that there. So if we want to do this in our calculator, just make sure that we're careful of how to go about that. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our calculator, we're going to go ahead and start with the numerator first. Okay, so we have 9 times 58,285 minus 1934 parentheses times 239 parentheses and then press enter, and that's going to be in the denominator. Excuse me, in the numerator. Okay, so this is what's in the numerator. Now we're going to say divided by. So we need to be very careful because we have two things that we need to put in parentheses. So the first square root must be in parentheses. So this is going to be parentheses. Okay, and we need this entire thing in parentheses. So we need one full parenthesis. So again, if we're putting this in our calculator, then we're going to do the following. We have one big parenthesis, and then we have this in parentheses times this in parentheses, in addition to everything else in here. So we have the first big parenthesis, and now we have the next parenthesis, and then the second square root. We have 9 times 455,364, and then minus, and then parentheses 1934, and then we're going to square that. Okay, and now we're going to have that in parentheses. Okay, now we're going to have that times button. So we have times. Now we're going to put this in parentheses. So okay, we have our division there. So we have times and then parentheses 9. Now this needs to be under the radical sign. So we need to make sure it's under the radical sign. So we have parentheses and then 9 times 7691, and then minus 239 squared with parentheses, and then we're going to shift over and then put the parentheses there and then press enter. Okay, so this is what we get. We get the following. We get 0.947349124, and we round this to 3 decimal places, which we get 0.947. So this 0.947 tells us that we have a strong positive linear correlation